Hi, you're on the Reddit Confessions channel. Tonight's story begins mid-breath, somewhere between a heartbeat and a heartbreak. Let's get into it. Her fingers were still warm when she pulled them away. "I'll be back in a minute," she said, adjusting the strap of her silver heel like it mattered more than what I just told her. The music in the ballroom slowed, and that song, our song, began to play. Only this time it wasn't our moment. It was hers and his. I watched her walk across the floor, the crowd parting like it was choreographed, until she reached him. He was waiting. Of course he was. Declan always waited like that. Hands in pockets, smirk half-baked, like he owned the night and just let me borrow a chair in it. They started dancing. Not the fun kind. Not the silly kind she used to pull me into during commercials in our kitchen. This was magnetic, controlled, erotic without even trying. I whispered it once more to myself, but too late. If you dance with him again, this conversation later won't go how you expect. But she was already in his arms, and the conversation was dead before it started. I wasn't even supposed to be at that gala. She said it was formal and intense and probably boring for you. But when the RSVP came back with Declan's name marked +1, suddenly I was invited after all. I don't remember what I was wearing. Something too tight in the collar. Something that made me sweat down my spine. But I remember what she wore because every man there remembered. A navy blue gown with a slit high enough to end conversations. And when she walked into that marble hall, she didn't look at me. She looked for him. You might think I overreacted, that I'm the jealous type. I wish I was dramatic enough to pull off jealousy. But this wasn't suspicion. This was proof in slow motion. Because I knew. I knew when her laugh hit that fake high note, the one she uses when she wants to impress. I knew when she told me to grab a drink and relax. I knew when Declan reached for her waist and she leaned in like she belonged there. And I sat there, like a doormat in a suit. I sipped a soda I didn't want. I made small talk with a stranger about startup stocks I didn't understand. I laughed at things I didn't hear. And the entire time, I stared at them moving together like they practiced that dance in a different life. Back home, I didn't wait for her to explain. I was too far past explanations. I had her iPad in my hands before she'd even kicked off her heels. I didn't even need to guess the password. She never changed it. First, it was small stuff. Quick messages. Office banter. Meeting reschedules. But then, Declan. You looked unreal tonight. Like I could have kissed you right there. Trina. I would have let you. And then a photo. Not naked. Not dirty. Just her reflection in a hotel mirror. Hair messy. Lipstick smudged. Wearing his blazer. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything. I didn't even move. I just sat there, blinking at the screen, holding it like it was radioactive, like it could burn the last shred of love I had left. She walked into the room in her robe and said, "Lowell, are you sulking again?" I didn't answer, because I wasn't sulking. I was breaking. She fell asleep like nothing happened. That's what broke me most. Trina curled up on her side of the bed, tucked into my old college sweatshirt like she hadn't just danced away a decade of trust. The room was quiet except for the hum of the humidifier she insisted on using year-round. I sat there motionless, with the iPad screen still lit beside me, staring at the last message Declan had sent. "Next time, don't forget to take my jacket off before you send a photo." Not that I'm complaining. There was no timestamp. Could have been yesterday. Could have been this morning. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. Instead, I stayed in that guest room she always hated, the one with the creaky mattress and the chipped lamp from my bachelor days. I used to joke that the room felt like it belonged to another man. That night, it did. And that man was me 6 months ago. Still stupid, still loyal, still calling her his world. The next morning, she was cheerful. Humming. Making coffee. "You were quiet last night," she said, sliding a mug toward me without looking up. "Everything okay?" That's when I asked, voice barely above a whisper. "How long has it been going on?" She didn't even ask what I meant. She just paused. For a second. And then smiled. "You're being paranoid again." My throat clenched. His blazer. The hotel mirror. Her smile faltered. For a blink. Then came the shrug. It was just a photo, Lowell. I was tipsy. It wasn't anything. But it was everything. She'd chosen a moment that should have been ours. One where she looked undone, vulnerable, beautiful, and given it to him. That image, intimate in its simplicity, was more honest than anything she'd said to me in months. I left the kitchen without finishing my coffee. At work, I stared at spreadsheets I couldn't see. At lunch, I scrolled through our old texts, looking for signs I missed. There were so many. Her excuses, her sudden late nights. The way she stopped asking how my day was. That evening, I came home to find a note taped to the fridge. At yoga, don't wait up. Except her yoga mat was still in the hallway, and her perfume was fresh in the air, and my stomach dropped like a stone. She wasn't at yoga, and I knew exactly where she was. I sat in the living room for 15 minutes after reading her note, staring at the front door like it might swing open and prove me wrong. But nothing moved. The hallway was silent. I walked over and lifted her yoga mat from where it always sat by the umbrella stand. Still rolled tight, still clean. She hadn't touched it in days. Something snapped inside me. I grabbed my keys, threw on my jacket, and got in the car without a plan. I didn't know where she was exactly, but I had a guess, and I hated that it came so easily. Declan lived in a modern condo complex on the edge of town, the kind with pretentious names like The Lofts, and a gated entry that looked like it belonged in some executive retreat. I'd only been there once before, months ago, when I picked Trina up after a work function. That night, I waited in the car while she wrapped something up. Tonight, I didn't wait. I pulled into the visitor's lot around 8:30 p.m. and killed the headlights. There were 3 cars parked under the far light pole. Hers was one of them. Her taillights still clicked as they cooled, meaning she'd just arrived. I sat in the dark and gripped the steering wheel until my fingers hurt. The elevator at the far end of the parking lot opened, and 2 silhouettes stepped out, laughing. I recognized her laugh instantly. It was higher pitched than normal, the way she used to sound before she started resenting everything I said. They didn't see me. I watched as she looped her arm through his and leaned her head against his shoulder like she'd been doing it forever. They didn't look rushed or guilty. They looked like a couple walking home from a nice dinner. When they disappeared into the building, I sat there, breathing through my teeth, until my vision started to blur. I didn't go inside. I didn't cause a scene. I drove to a gas station 2 blocks away, parked in the back, and cried harder than I had since my dad's funeral. Not loud sobs, just this low, guttural pain that made it hard to swallow. And when I came home, her car wasn't in the driveway. But the note on the fridge was gone. Like it never existed. Like I never existed. When she got back, around midnight, I was sitting on the couch with her iPad in my lap, and all I asked was, "How was yoga?" She hesitated, only for a second, then said, "Hot. We had a sub. The playlist was awful." And that lie, so simple, so casual, burned more than anything I saw in that parking lot. I couldn't stop thinking about that lie. It wasn't the affair itself, though God knows that was enough. It was the casual confidence with which she crafted it. The playlist was awful, she'd said, with a little laugh, like we were talking about traffic or the weather. It was so specific, so deliberate. That's what made it feel personal. Not just cheating, performing for me. I spent the next morning searching online for local yoga classes. I called 2 studios pretending to be a first-timer interested in hot yoga. Both said there hadn't been a class with a substitute the night before. Neither one had anyone named Trina on their roster that week. Still, I kept asking questions until I felt like I was the one doing something wrong. And when she came downstairs in her robe, sipping her green smoothie, I just stared at her and wondered how long I'd been living next to a stranger. That weekend, we had plans to visit her mother. I didn't cancel, though I wanted to. I wanted to scream at her across the kitchen, demand answers, demand truth, but I was afraid. Afraid that if I pushed, she'd leave without a word. So I played along. I drove the 2 hours, smiled through polite conversation, and let her mother talk about recipes and garden soil like my marriage wasn't slowly disintegrating inside my skull. On the way back, Trina dozed off in the passenger seat. Her phone buzzed once, then again. I glanced over. The screen lit up with a preview. Still thinking about that song. Next time, I'll bring the wine. It was Declan. She shifted slightly, still asleep. I didn't wake her. I just kept driving through the dark, swallowing the acid in my throat, pretending I hadn't seen it. But something changed in me on that ride home. It wasn't rage. It wasn't even sadness. It was a numbness I hadn't felt before. Like someone had flipped a switch and drained all the color from the world. That numbness didn't leave. It clung to me like damp air, following me through meetings, through meals, even in silence. I stopped asking questions because I already had answers. I just didn't want to hear them in her voice. She didn't even notice how quiet I'd become. Or maybe she did and didn't care. Trina laughed at the TV the same way she always did. She left laundry half-folded, humming to herself while texting God knows who. I watched her like a stranger watches a stage play, close enough to see the expressions, too far to be part of the story. The final break didn't come with a scream or an affair confession. Came on a Tuesday. We were supposed to meet for dinner. Nothing fancy, just a small Thai place we used to love. I arrived early, sat by the window, and ordered her favorite drink, ginger soda with lime. I even took the wedge off the rim the way she liked it. But 20 minutes passed, then 40. I texted her once. No reply. I called straight to voicemail. I sat there, letting the ice melt in both glasses. Finally, I left a $10 bill on the table and walked out. My phone buzzed just as I reached the car. Her message read, "Sorry, forgot. Got caught up in something. Don't wait up." No apology. No explanation. Just like that. I didn't drive home. I didn't tell anyone where I went. I just drove past our neighborhood, past the gas station where I once proposed to her with a ring in a coffee cup, past the city limits. I found a cheap motel on the edge of nowhere and paid for 3 nights in cash. I left my phone off, stared at the blank ceiling until sunrise. That was the night I realized I didn't want her to find me. Not yet. I needed her to feel what it's like when I go quiet. I needed her to wonder. The motel was ugly in the way cheap places always are. Dim lights, floral bedspread, buzzing air conditioner that couldn't decide on a temperature. But it was quiet. And more than that, it was mine. No perfume in the air. No reminder of the life I had spent a decade building around someone who didn't notice when I vanished. For 2 days, I stayed in that room. Ate crackers. Slept too much. Thought too much. I didn't cry, not really. I just sort of unraveled in slow motion, watching my reflection in the bathroom mirror like I was trying to catch myself lying. The first time she called, it was the 3rd day. Early morning. I had turned my phone back on just long enough to check my work email. Her name popped up before the signal bars even settled. I didn't answer. Then came the texts. "Where are you?" Followed by, "Are you okay?" Then "Lowell, please. I'm starting to worry." I stared at them for a long time, but I couldn't bring myself to respond. She hadn't worried when she danced with another man. She hadn't worried when she invented a fake yoga class or kissed Declan in hotel lobbies. She only worried when I went silent. By the end of that day, I had 12 missed calls. I finally powered the phone off again, dropped it into the nightstand drawer, and lay back on the bed, eyes open. That silence, it started to feel like a weapon. Not one I liked using, but one that was finally being felt on the other end. She once said I was too soft to ever really leave. That I overthink things into extinction. Maybe she was right. But that night I started writing a letter. Not the kind that explains everything. The kind that doesn't. I didn't know why I was writing the letter, only that I needed to. It wasn't a goodbye, not really. It wasn't even a confrontation. It was more like an autopsy. A quiet dissection of everything I had ignored for too long. I started with a sentence I never imagined I'd write to her. "I think we lost each other a long time ago, and I was the only one still looking." The pen felt heavy in my hand. I scratched out whole paragraphs, rewrote the same sentence 5 times, trying to capture the exact kind of hurt that doesn't bruise, doesn't bleed, but lingers. I wrote about the nights I watched her texting with her back to me, the birthdays she forgot until the morning of, the way she laughed at Declan's jokes but rolled her eyes at mine. I wrote about the dance. God, that dance. How her body curved into his like it had never belonged to me at all. How I sat at that table, invisible, watching my wife fall in love with someone in real time. And still, I had wanted her to stop, to turn around, to come back to me. I folded the letter when I finished, slipped it into the front pocket of my jacket, and stared at the ceiling for an hour, wondering what it would be like to disappear for good. Not run away, just let go. Let the silence carry me somewhere she couldn't reach. That afternoon, I drove back into town. Not home, not yet. But I parked 3 blocks away from our house and just watched. Her car was there. The living room lights were on. A shadow moved across the blinds, her pacing on the phone, probably calling me again. But I didn't move. I sat in that car with the letter burning in my jacket like a confession I couldn't deliver. I didn't go inside. I just watched the woman I loved wander through a house I didn't feel welcome in anymore. I waited until the house went dark. She had stopped pacing. The living room lights went off one by one, and eventually, the upstairs window glowed soft and low. The light she always left on when she showered. That was when I got out of the car. I didn't sneak. I didn't creep. I walked up the steps like it was still my home. The spare key was still in the same place, tucked behind the warped shutter on the porch. When I stepped inside, the air smelled like her shampoo and lemon candles. The quiet wrapped around me like a warning. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't want to hear her hum. I didn't want to see the towel on the floor or the phone lighting up with someone else's name. Instead, I went to the kitchen. It was always the heart of our house, where she told me we'd grow old, where she said we'd teach our future kids to cook pancakes, where I once danced with her in my socks just because she looked sad. I placed the folded letter on the counter, next to her half-used mug of tea, and took off my wedding band. It had left a faint dent on my finger, but I didn't rub it away. I wanted it to stay there at least for a while. I looked around once, not for nostalgia, just to be sure I wouldn't come back. I didn't take anything except my coat. No clothes, no toothbrush, no photo of us smiling in Sedona. I locked the door behind me and dropped the key into the mailbox. It hit the metal bottom with a small, hollow sound, like a final punctuation mark. By the time she came downstairs the next morning, I was gone. No fight, no speech, no tears on the floor, just an empty space where I used to stand, and a letter that began with, "You stopped dancing with me long before that night. Thanks for watching Reddit Confessions. Have you ever left quietly just to see if they'd chase you? Let us know in the comments. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more true confessions.